Why don't you just start out by introducing yourself and what you do?
Hi, my name is Carmine Rubino. I'm one of the owners of the Anbino Vineyards and Cellars. I do everything. I mix the music here. I also make the wine. And I wash glasses when I'm not busy. Other than that, it's pretty boring. No, I'm only kidding. We do live recordings here. We do live videos. Also, if bands want to do a live album, I have a whole recording system that I use. And so far, it's been really, really great, exciting recording some of the bands here. So just great musicianship on the Central Coast.
Yeah, definitely. And it sounds like you really appreciate what that music offers into this area.
Oh yeah, you know, there's so many different venues on the Central Coast that the music scene here has really exploded in the last 8 or 9 years. When we first started the tasting room, I think we were the only venue or winery that was doing music, and now it's everywhere to be found on the weekends and sometimes during the week.
How long have you been doing music here at DMB?
8 years, going on 9. In the beginning, the stage was just for the family band. My nephew plays saxophone, I play bass. One of my sons plays keyboards, my other son's a drummer. My daughter-in-law sings, and my nephew plays sax. And so the family band would play 3 or 4 times a year. That's why we had this whole setup behind me. But since then, we have music every Friday and Saturday, and we'll be starting a jazz series on Sunday afternoons, maybe twice a month.
Very cool. So music's been in your history, in your blood for a long time, huh?
Oh yeah, I was in, you know, a whole mess of bands since I was 14 years old. That's how I made my living, playing music up until the 70s. And then I started recording at studios in New York, just doing rock and roll, jazz, and a lot of other groups.
Very cool. How has music been a part of your life? When did you come out to the West Coast, and how has music played a part of your life through that whole transition?
I was working at a record plant in New York, and then I went upstate New York to Bearsville, and then I eventually landed in a studio in New York, SLO Sound, and they did a lot of R&B and disco. And eventually I just couldn't handle the disco end of it, so my nephew John was on his way from Europe, and he stopped in New York to visit, and I had asked him, I said, you know, I've been out to California a couple of times recording some jazz albums, and I said, hey, is there anything happening out there? And he says, well, I'm going to be doing a couple of albums. So I decided that was the ideal time to make the move, and I came out in '79 and worked for a couple of producers. I did Dirty Dancing for one producer, and just a whole mess of rock and roll out here. And then in '89, I went to Sony Pictures and was recording there. So actually, music has played an important part of my life since when I've been 13 years old.
Wow.
And I made a living, which is really incredible.
Yeah, that's kind of the main focus of what we're talking about today is how do you combine that passion with the making a living at it, you know, growing up?
Well, you know, that's a real good question, because I see artists that play here and other places, and you know, they have their direction that they want to do, and it's great, but maybe it's not what the mainstream people are looking for. I know here, when we book bands, in the beginning we were doing bands that did original music, which was fine because they have their own following. But if you want to draw a bigger audience, for us, it's more bands that do covers because people want to dance and have a good time. Not that they wouldn't have a good time with people doing original music, but it's sort of like a limited audience. But then, if you have a passion for it, and I know that some of these songwriters, and they're touring and they're doing quite well. I mean, it's a lot of work on their part because they have to travel and do a East Coast tour or West Coast tour. But then they're promoting their original music, selling CDs. So I guess that works for them.
Yeah, there's a lot of different niches these
Yeah,
days that
yeah.
you can explore. Well, you mentioned cover songs, and I'm assuming just because that's part of what your audience here is kind of looking for. What do you look for as a venue for your music?
I get a lot of inquiries from agents and also from bands that want to play here. And so what I'll do is they'll either send me a CD or give me a link to their website. And so I'll listen to it. Basically, it really has to be the musicianship. I think that would be a part of it. Also, the repertoire that they have, and also if it's going to fit into our niche here. And it's not that we always book bands that do covers. We'll do sort of like a concert atmosphere where we'll set up more tables, and it'll be no dancing. It'll just be a concert, and maybe it'll be towards jazz or maybe bluegrass, but different venues. So it's not always a dance thing, but I try to mix it up just so that we can expose our audience to different venues of music. I know the first time we did bluegrass, I go, I don't know if bluegrass would work here. And I think the first time we had the band here, band was called Salty Sweets. I think we had maybe 10 or 12 people. But boy, now when they're here, I mean, the place is just packed. So, it was a lesson for me and a lesson for our audience that, you shouldn't just limit your scope to certain kinds of music. And for me, if it's musical and it's good, I would think about it, that's what we look for. And basically, I'm actually booked up now until October with bands.
Wow.
And there's a lot of bands and a lot of different kind of music to choose from. And I think that's just because of the growth of the wineries on the Central Coast. Is probably more happening on the Central Coast musically than maybe in LA. Because I don't think there's that many places to play in LA, but here, even if it's a small winery, they'll have a singer-songwriter or a single artist playing music on a weekend. So the music scene is quite active in the Central Coast.
There's definitely a lot to choose from.
Yes.
How do you think that influences the relationship between venues and musicians around here with so many artists and venues?
I've heard different opinions from musicians, and I know that when musicians come here, the way we treat the room, it's acoustically treated, the equipment that we have, so they tend to feel very comfortable here. The sound on stage is great. I do the mixing, and the sound in the room is really sort of designed. Some of the other places, maybe acoustically, it's not what the musicians are looking for, but so maybe they don't feel as comfortable. But that's just part of the thing, because I think here the room is designed musically for our family band. That was the intent. So now it's carried over onto other groups where maybe some of the other venues, maybe the music was just an afterthought. So maybe they can't acoustically treat the room. So it's just whatever the room sounds like, that's what's going to happen, But I think if it's a choice of working or not working, it's an easy choice, no matter what the room sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. But it sounds like from your stance as a venue, you've put a lot of effort into making music and the value of music a priority for your venue here.
Well, yeah, originally it was the music wasn't part of the draw or the importance. It was just an afterthought. Like I said, we have a family band, so acoustically we treated it just for us so that we would feel comfortable playing here. And then we would only do music maybe 3 or 4 times a year. And people would come in and they would see the equipment already set up, because that's the house drum. We have house microphones, so everything's pretty much set. And people would say, well, when is the band going to play? And we would say, well, come back in May or 3 months later. So eventually we started doing music one Saturday a month. And then what happened was the bands started to say, well, would you book me? And then it became every Saturday. And then I got booked up on Saturday, so some of the bands would say, well, I could do Friday, so then it became Friday and Saturday. And then we started doing the jazz series on Sunday, so sort of took on a life of its own. But originally that wasn't the intent of the tasting room. So now it's sort of like a tasting room during the day, and in the evening we have music venue. But it's a great combination between wine and music.
Yeah, they go well together, especially when you have the right combination. How has your working relationship been with the musicians in the area?
Very, very positive. I can't think of any time where we had problems, but so far it's just really been a pleasure working with the musicians, and also whatever suggestions I have, I'll tell them, and they pretty much listen, So it's been really, really great. We didn't have any problems.
That's I think it sounds like a testament to the collaboration that seems to happen between musician and venue here.
Also, being a musician and through the years working different bars and venues, I know how the bands were treated. So we try not to carry that on, being an owner to the band. We've been there, so we try to make it as comfortable as possible for the musicians.
I've heard people talking about the mutual success, and it kind of sounds like what you're saying, that firsthand what it's like to be a working musician, and so how to approach a working relationship that's fruitful for both.
Right,
both sides.
and we try to make it comfortable for them on stage, and if they're comfortable, it's going to reflect their performance, because they don't have to worry about, is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? And then, it sort of takes away from their performance. I know as playing in bands, if the sound isn't right, all night you're adjusting your amplifier because it's not right, and so that your performance sort of takes a back seat, or maybe not suffers, but you're not focused on it. Where if the band is comfortable on stage, then all their energy is in playing and also entertaining the customers.
Yeah, and that was my next thought is when it's working so well, when you've created such a great venue and has great reputation, and the musicians have such a great time playing here, do you see that affecting your business or your clients?
Oh yeah, we have people that come to this tasting room every Friday and Saturday to listen to music. They love music. People that have been here for the first time, they'll see the reaction, and naturally they join into the atmosphere. So it rubs off on the newcomers, and also we have the old timers that have been here for a while. And also it's great for the bands, because if they have CDs to sell or T-shirts or a mailing list, people go, oh yeah, band sounds great. Where are guys playing again? So it works for everyone. It works for the audience. It works for the band. And the more people we have here, we could sell more wine. So it works for everyone.
Yeah. Where do you think that musicians and venues can contribute to that mutual success?
I think just being aware of what the public want. I know that every band has a CD, so I think it's just whatever you can do to promote your music and yourself, because there's no more record companies that will promote you. You have to do everything yourself. And so however you can, affect the audience with your performance, with your CDs or whatever, I think it just helps. It's a tough road, And I know that some of the musicians, some of them are retired, so they do the music as a sideline. There's other musicians that are, music is their livelihood. So it's kind of tough, But it's great that there are places to play on the Central Coast, so that musicians have a way to make somewhat of a living.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you find a preference or any differences in those different types of musicians that are contacting you to book, like the hobbyists versus the working musicians, or how they work with you, or?
Yeah, I think that people or bands are really appreciative if you give them a stage and somewhere to play. And I think if the audience is right for them, I think it only boosts their CD sales or their following. That's just, it's so far it's been really, really great experience for us. So it's really hard to see the negative effect,
Yeah. You see so much success happening, right?
Yeah, and the people, that we have here, really, really nice people, and are appreciative whatever the room contributes to their sound, and also whatever I can contribute to their sound. So for us, it's just all been positive.
I can say from firsthand experience as a working musician here too, that not every venue considers that angle and appreciates that. What would you say to venues that don't consider that, or who some? I guess let me put it this way: do you feel that there are venues in the area that take advantage of so many hard-working, hungry musicians? And
I think that maybe they don't take advantage, but maybe their venue is not conducive to the greatest sound for music. Maybe they're focused in on their business and music is just an offshoot of it. So to them, maybe not being in the sound business or a musician, that, well, does it really matter if we set them up in the corner or over here? I mean, maybe they're not doing it to be mean, maybe just out of ignorance that to them it doesn't really matter. Where we have a different outlook right from the get-go. When we first leased this place, we were concerned about the sound. So we had a friend who built studios all over the world came in, and he sort of said, this is what you have to do to make it sound right. So right from the beginning, sound was a concern for us. And the other places, I think what happened was they were already established, and then bands were an aftershoot of, hey, let's get music on a Saturday afternoon. Oh yeah, set them up over there. So, and maybe that might have caused some friction between the bands, and maybe the owner doesn't understand and go, well, how come you guys are complaining? It's just music and you're in the corner, So maybe that could contribute to some friction, Here, I think bands are just happy to be on stage. Oh, you got a stage, people can see us, so.
Yeah, it's really set up well. We can see on the video here, and the listeners would be amazed at how much you put in. Could you give us a ballpark range of what it costs to build such a nice studio and to keep it up for the musicians here?
Well, in my day, a band had to go to a studio to record. With the technology, I mean, I do recording here, and I just have a computer, and the stuff sounds great. I mean, it sounds just as good as a $100,000 console. Now you're recording on Pro Tools, for a couple of grand, and and it sounds great, and you could move things around. So the technology is really, really advanced where, if you have the environment, you could record any band with just the technology that's available today. You really don't have to go to a studio unless you want maybe a big drum sound or something like that. But you could just do great records in your bedroom or in a little venue, If you're looking for something that's going to affect the sound, like in the old days, we would, have drums in a big studio because that was the norm. You want a big, enormous drum sound. But now, you could probably get that sound in a small room with all the technology, plus all the plugins. That's another thing. When I was making records, it was just physically, you had the hardware. Now they duplicate all that hardware with plugins. If you A/B'd it against the original, maybe it may not sound the same, but who's going to know?
Yeah,
I mean, really. But the technology has brought recording. It just advanced it so much. Basically, probably every musician has a little studio at home. I mean, Pro Tools and Logic, and so it's just opened up the whole recording field so that a lot of bands can produce their own product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great, and it's getting so much more content out there. And do you enjoy that collaboration with the musicians here? And
Yes.
Recording them? Yeah.
Sometimes another thing about performing live is you can capture the energy. Technically, it may not be the greatest recording because I try to cut down leakage and try to isolate things, but you just can't match that energy of a live performance, And so sometimes I'll record the band and everything's just gelling. The energy is there, the audience is going crazy, and it's just like I'm going, oh wow, this is perfect, I don't know if you could capture that in the studio. You may get a better sounding record technically, but the live situation has its own vibe.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I love that magic that can happen with a live sound. This is a good example of how the things come together well in a business and creative situation, and the music and the business can interact and synergize off each other. For the places that doesn't happen, some of the musicians around town have been bringing up the idea of a musicians union, and I'm curious, what do you think that might have an effect on to the area around here?
I was a musician. I belong to the musicians union. I've since resigned because I don't really play out anymore. But
which union was that?
This was Local 47 in LA. And then when I lived in New Jersey, I was local, I think it was Local 17. So I was a union member for a long time. And the union does have its good points as far as like setting the rate for recording, also for club dates. So the union is looking to protect the musician. Now, the thing is that I'm not sure how it works now, but in my day, if you played in a non-union place, if you were a member of the union, you couldn't perform. So I don't know how that would work.
And so the venues, in your experience, the venues would kind of pick too? Or?
Yeah, they were sort of like in the union, or they would hire union musicians. And then if you were not union, then they would say, well, you can't perform at this place. I'm not sure if that still holds true, but in my day it did. Mm-hmm. The thing is, that's a tough question, because what happens if a performer wants to play at a venue and maybe they can only afford a certain amount of money, but the union or all the musicians agree this is the rate. Mm-hmm. So what does that person do? Not take the job because it's lesser rate, because maybe the owner can't afford that? So that's all these little things, and I mean, is everybody going to hold firm on a certain rate, and what is that rate?
Right. Yeah. There's all
So
those
that's,
variables. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, I don't know. You know, that's a good question, how that would affect, and what happens if a venue, it's a choice of paying a musician X amount of dollars and not having music. They may just say, hey, I'm not going to do it.
Mm.
So that cuts out another performance place. So I'm not sure. I mean, I don't have an opinion about it because it's sort of nebulous. It could go anywhere.
Yeah. Just talk at this point.
Yeah.
How have you handled situations, or have there been disagreements on pay or whatnot with
The bands
anything
here
here?
play for the door, so we don't pay the bands. And I make that known up front. If they want to play here, we'll say, you know, you play for the door. And we send out an email every week of bands that are performing that weekend. Also, we do have a website, so we'll post a month or 2 months in advance so that people can see who's playing here. We have a little blurb about them. We have their website on our website page. And so people pretty much know what the band is about. And I mean, sometimes if it's an unknown band, we may not get jammed with people, but I make that known in the beginning. And so they're aware of, they may walk out of here with $20 a piece, or they may walk out of here with $100 a piece. So it's, you know, you don't know.
It's stuff about the promotion that you do too. That has a lot of extra
Yeah.
than most venues.
Yeah.
And when it sounds like you have good communication between you and the musicians, and you guys are very clear about what the expectations are on each side.
Yeah, and usually when a band plays here for the first time, I mean, they love the sound of the room. They love me having to do the sound, so they don't have to deal with that. So there's a lot of pluses for them. First time they play here, maybe they may not have a large crowd, but the pluses outweigh maybe the small crowd because they don't have to bring a lot of their equipment. You know, they have somebody to do the sound. They have lights. So, you know, it may be a win-win situation for them and also for you know, the people that come and see them. And usually what happens is if it's a first-time band, if it is a small crowd, the people that come here, if they like them, and then the word gets around, and next time they play here, the crowd is larger. But initially, you know, you just never know.
Yeah, and just trying to see what works and what
Right.
builds off each other,
Yeah.
right? You know, the idea of the communication between the two sides, the musicians and the venues, is the main goal of why I do this show. What tips or advice could you offer to musicians and venues about getting that communication to be more mutually beneficial, like it's working for you at Anbino here?
I think from the band's point of view, even if it is a bad situation, maybe they're not happy where they are in the room, you know, just do the best you can, because you never know who's in the audience. You know, there may be somebody that could make your career or help you out doing something for the band. You never know. So whatever the situation is, just try to put that in the background and focus in on your performance and entertaining the people. As far as the venue owners, I would say, you know, just treat the band like a customer. You know, just try to accommodate them. You know, it's not always going to be an ideal situation, but just try to make them feel comfortable, and you know, it's a working relationship. You know, you don't want to, the band and the owner don't want to be at odds, because then it's not going to work for anybody. So, I think each entity has to give a little bit. You know, just try to make it work. You're only there for 2-3 hours, so just try to make the best of it.
You said you played bass,
Yes.
right? Do you still play?
I play in a 15-piece band
Wow.
that's it's called Swing for Joy. We rehearse every Monday night at ABC Church in Atascadero, and the band, the directors are associated with Arts for Living. So we do a lot of fundraising for the United Cerebral Palsy and SLO, and they are involved with cerebral palsy. They're music therapists. So every Monday night we have rehearsal, and it's great. We've played here, we've played other venues, and when we do outside venues, they usually, I think the organization will make a donation. But it's
Very
great
cool.
though, because it still keeps me playing, you know, and I'm still playing, but it's not taking up all my time because I have other things on my to-do list.
Are there any shows coming up soon? Or?
We're going to be doing a benefit for the cerebral palsy, the parents and things like that in Atascadero Park. But it's sort of like a picnic.
When does that happen?
I think that's June 10th. And also, we're trying to get a date for them to perform here on a Saturday afternoon from 2 to 4:30. So we clear the floor, and we'll have like five saxes, 5 trumpets, 2 bones, piano, bass, and drums. So half of the rhythm section and trumpets are on stage, the saxes are on the floor. And we play, you know, music from the 30s, 40s to some hipper stuff. So it's a wide range of music that we play.
And where can people go to check out when that might be scheduled? Your website?
Just on anbino.com. Like I said, we post our music for a month or 2 months. So if they want to see what's going on here musically, just check out on our website.
Cool. anbino.com.
That's right.
Can you leave us with a great story or some insight from your own experience in the music industry?
I would say my experience, and I've been doing this for, I don't know, 30, 40 years, I would say all my experiences are 99.95 wonderful experiences. There's always going to be that 1 or 2 and that, you know, you're sort of not comfortable with. And for some reason, those are the ones that stick in your mind. All the good experiences, you could isolate some, but you know, some of them, until I start telling stories and then experiences come back. But I would say 99.5 experiences in the whole industry have been really great. A lot of them very funny, a lot of them serious, a lot of them not too good. But those were the minority, the not too good ones. So overall, I think it's been an experience for me, and I think I've been blessed that I could make a living playing music and being involved in music, and I know that's not true of everyone. And there's so much great talent out there. I mean, we see talent that comes here, and you're just blown away by how many great musicians, great singers, you know, and you know, I go, how come that person didn't make it? How come that band didn't make it? But I guess, you know, the field is so crowded, and then it narrows down to how many people do make it. But I don't know. I think, you know, people ask me advice. Well, should I do this or should I do that? You know, I don't want to be the one to say, no, man, you shouldn't do music. You should do a day job because, you know, music is not going to happen. It may not happen. But what happens is it may happen for that person. So I just tell people that come here and ask me for advice, I said, listen, just get a great education. And then if you want to pursue music, great. But have something to fall back on in case it doesn't happen. And also, I know some musicians where they'll start out being a musician, that's what they want to do, and then other doors open because they do have music in their life. You know, maybe post-production, or maybe they're into computers or programs. So that road, that music road, has all these offshoots. But if that doesn't happen, at least have something to fall back on. I mean, that would be my advice. But well, I don't want to discourage anyone.
Absolutely. No, it's a great life in music, isn't it? No matter which way you end up in going with it.
Yeah.
I think it's always going to be a fun road. Well, Mr. Carmine Rubino. Did I say that right?
Yeah, that's fine. Not too many Carmines out in California.
Co-owner and booking manager for the Anbino Cellars, and as well bass player with what was the name?
Swing for Joy.
Swing for Joy. Thank you so much for talking with us today. I really appreciate your insight.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you.
What you do makes a difference.